So today we're going to be going over my evolution as a AR owner and shooter, starting from the first AR that I ever got all the way up to my current duty setup. So starting off, we have got, and I did a bunch of shooting with all of these to run through them and get them, make sure they're proper quality. First off, we have here is a Bushmaster Carbon 15. This one was likely manufactured during the assault weapons ban. As you can see, it doesn't have any sort of flash hider. And then I think this adjustable stock and foregrip were added later on. But I'm going to put in some close-up footage of it. So what we have this one outfitted with is some Firefield sight that is 2.5 to 10 power. We have a Knight's Armament foregrip, and that's probably going to be coming off here. And it's got that quad rail. And the interesting thing about this one is that it is an all-polymer construction. So it's got an all-polymer upper receiver and a completely polymer lower receiver. We've got some single point sling on here, not sure of the brand. So the story behind this one is that it was a gift to me when I graduated basic training. So a lot of the stuff isn't really how I would set it up, but I haven't changed anything on it since it was gifted to me. During the course of the review for this one, however, I came across a pretty severe safety issue, and I haven't seen if this is common with other Carbon 15s, but I did hear that they've got some reliability issues. So the issue that I'm having is when I pull the trigger and then bring it back, the trigger won't reset. As you can see, I'm pulling the trigger. The gun is on fire, obviously. As you can see, the gun is on fire. I'm pulling the trigger, and the hammer is not falling. But when I go to change it from safe to semi, or semi to safe, then the hammer resets, and you're able to shoot it again. See, as you can see, the trigger is, should be resetted. I can't even push it forward. It's only when I go to put it on safety that it resets, and it gets locked at this about 45-degree angle where it's technically on safe, but the hammer resets there, and in my opinion, that was a big enough safety issue for me to shelve this gun, and I honestly will only really keep it for the sentimental value. It's the first AR I ever shot, so it's got quite a bit of sentimental value to it. It's a piece of history, but it's going to be a safe queen from now on, just because that safety issue is likely some warping with the lower receiver causing that. I've tried taking out the trigger pack and reinstalling it, and that did not help. So this one is now going to be a safe queen. Alright, so my second AR here, this one I built after I got done with the Army, after I left the Army. I built this one more so as a challenge to myself to understand, the inner workings of an AR. And this was during that big part shortage during COVID. So a lot of the parts on this were more so out of necessity than out of any specific choice. So what we have here is we've got an Anderson Manufacturing lower and upper receiver. We've got an SL Magpul MOE grip, and then a SLS stock, and then a Sig Bravo 5 for the scope, and there's going to be a review coming for that soon. And then we have an offset Romeo 5, and that's on a Daniel Defense 45 degree mount. We've got a Hansen Profile 16-inch barrel, and that's their 223 Wild one, and a Strike Industries 15-inch handguard. And this handguard, it's passable. It's a handguard, and it's fairly cheap as well for what you're getting. But it's very thick in the hand. It's not super comfortable in the hand, and there's nothing that really stands out about it. It's relatively heavy, and this entire setup altogether is relatively heavy. The trigger we've got here is a Rave Arms 142, and then we've got this RVG and a little bit of pick rail up here. And again, that's more because it's what I had than anything else. So my thoughts on this one. The biggest issues that I have with this one is that the muzzle brake, which is a Epsilon VG6, it's pretty obnoxious to shoot the Epsilon VG6, and that's more of a case with any muzzle brake. But that concussion, especially when you're shooting in awkward positions, is something that's fairly annoying to the shooter. I've got a full review that's going to be coming out soon on the Bravo 5, but I am not impressed with it at all. I really would not recommend it. A little bit of a spoiler for that upcoming review there. But the overall setup of this one is nice, especially when you're considering the offset red dot with a prism sight. I think that's something that I may try to work into a future build, or when I take off this Bravo, I might put another prism sight on this just to, work through that. And because I think it's got a good amount of potential, but it's just not there. As far as the upper and lower receiver go, there is a lot of play between the upper and lower receiver, the two of them mating, and this is a match set from Anderson Manufacturing, so they should be pretty well toleranced, but there's a pretty good amount of play between the two of them. As far as our sling goes, we've got a Blue Force Gear Vickers sling, which is my go-to sling on all of my rifles now. But that's the simple overview for this one, and I'm really not blown away with it. So it was only a short while after I got this one that I sort of started to realize the issues with it, and that leads us into my next one. So our next rifle here, this is the Palmetto State Armory PA-15, and I purchased the upper receiver as a complete match set and then built the lower receiver myself. And the lockup between the upper and lower receiver on this one is so much better than that Anderson Manufacturing. Palmetto State Armory has really been killing it recently with their new lines like the Saber line. This is one of their older models, but it's still, as far as like a duty grade weapon goes, Palmetto State Armory I think is the sort of bare minimum standard for what I would expect out of a duty grade weapon. So we managed to get a Rave ambidextrous trigger on here, or ambidextrous charging handle on here. I got that for free with one of the trigger packs while it was on sale. I think overall this entire setup here is about $600, $700. We've got the SL, MOE SL for the grip here, and then the SL stock. If I was going to change anything about this one, the stock is what I would change out. Right now I've got it set up with a Magpul MS4 sling, but I'd like to change that out for one of our Vickers slings. But this stock doesn't have any QD mounts for it, and I think it's only 2 or 3 more ounces heavier with the QD slots. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to not have the QD slots on there. If I was going back, I probably wouldn't have bought this stock. I'd probably just buy the one that's got the QD on it. We've got a Magpul hand stop on here. This is pretty convenient, especially for, you know, when you're doing that full arm out stretch shooting, and then just your standard A2 bird cage. So after I bought that previous gun with the Sig Bravo 5 on it right now, I sort of realized keep it simple, stupid, and went back to the basics, and that's what this one is based off of. Me trying to go back to the basics. Like I said earlier, the big things that I'd like to change with this one are the stock and the sling. And then the trigger is just the Palmetto State Armory standard trigger, so it's about a 6-pound pull, and it's not blowing anyone away. You know, it's a mil-spec trigger. So I would like to replace that with a more quality trigger as well, but that's going to happen eventually. And then the other big thing is I'd like to put a magnifier, like a flip-up magnifier or a flip-to-side magnifier on here to work in conjunction with this Romeo 5 on here. I think SIG sells a 3-power magnifier for relatively cheap, and that's something that I could put on here that would still keep the price down on this build, and it would still be very functional. So one other thing that I'd like to change with both the Anderson Manufacturing and the Palmetto State Armory is I'd like to get a Magpul QD mount and mount it all the way forward on their rails. Right now I'm just using the inbuilt mount, which is right at the end of the receiver, and that inbuilt mount kind of makes it a little bit more difficult than I'd like for that full arms outstretched shooting. So this is my current build. We've got a 14.7 Ballistic Advantage Hansen profile barrel with a pin and weld Surefire War Comp. It's got that SL stock with the QD mount, so I can have my Vickers sling on here as well. And then we've got an Aero Precision lower and upper receiver with a BCM, I believe this is the MCMR 13-inch handguard. And then I've got a Surefire Scout Light on here with a Arasaka Defense mount to keep it up in that 1 o'clock position. And that way it keeps close to the rifle. I don't have to worry about my light getting snagged on anything. We have got a Vortex Strike Eagle 1 to 8 power first focal plane on here. And a... can't believe I forgot Radian. Radian Raptor SD charging handle, and then the bolt is a Ballistic Advantage bolt as well. We also have an adjustable gas block on here that I've tuned, and then as far as the internals go, this one is the most non-stock internals. So we've got a Geissle Super 42 spring with an H2 buffer, and then we've got the same Rave 142 3.5 pound single stage trigger. That's going to get changed out soon for either the Geissle SSA trigger or the LBT trigger, but I haven't quite decided on those yet. I figure it'll probably be whichever one goes on sale first, right? As far as other things that I'm going to change with this one, the scope, the Vortex Strike Eagle 1-8 first focal plane is a pretty hefty scope. I believe it's 26 ounces for just the scope. That's not including the mount. I think it comes to about 30 ounces overall weight with the scope and mount. So right now this is a relatively heavy rifle just because of all of the different stuff that we have on here. Eventually I'm going to swap this scope out for either the Primary Arms PLX-C or the Nightforce NX8. I haven't quite decided on that yet, which one I want to go for there. Right now I'm leaning towards the Nightforce NX8, so if you have any suggestions in the comments, please let me know. But this is really what I consider to be sort of the fighting rifle, the modern fighting rifle. It's got a short enough barrel length to be handy without diminishing your accuracy very much. And I also use 77 grain open tip match or SMKs for my like standard ammo. Sometimes I'll use 55 grains if I'm just training, but typically I'm using 77 grain. So that really offsets the negative of having the 14-inch barrel. It also means that when I have the suppressor on, which is currently in jail, this rifle is significantly more easy to handle and more easy to, you know, keep supported, hike with, move around with for extended periods of time. It's just a good rifle in general. As far as lockup goes, the upper and lower receiver, which aren't even a match set from Arrow, their lockup is extremely good. There's nearly no wobble between the upper and lower receiver. The Radian Raptor charging handle is doing a great job. It's got pretty great form and function. The only issue that I've had with it in the past is if I'm not wearing gloves and I come over the right side, I've broken my fingernail on the forward assist a couple times. You know, that's not really that big of a problem. But yeah, so this is my current duty rifle, and it's everything I could ask for right now. The only thing is I'd like to change out the scope, and I'll probably end up putting this scope on one of my other rifles. Okay, so like I was talking about in the video, that 14.7 is really where I want it to be right now, the Arrow Precision build. That's sort of my current fighting rifle. There's a couple little things that I'd like to change on it, like adding in the Geissle Maritime switch, swapping out the trigger for a 2-stage trigger, and swapping out the scope for something that's more lightweight. But other than that, for right now, that's where I want to be. I've got a couple of builds in my head, like a SPR type build, as well as like a 10.5 300 blackout. I've already got the suppressor for both of those already, but they're both in jail, so fuck the ATF. Anyway, I've got a lot more stuff that's similar to this going to be coming out soon, so like and subscribe if you liked it, and thank you so much for watching. good time.